The sea otter, with its loving heart, the kind that makes you want to kiss the screen when you see it, held a young harbor seal underwater until it stopped moving. And even then, it didn't let go. It stayed with the corpse for days. Yes, I am talking about that cute, innocent sea otter. When I first read the field report published in the journal Aquatic Mammals, my mind was blown. I honestly wondered if the creature I had imagined and the one described in those pages were even the same animal, because everything, and I mean everything I thought I knew, was shattered. Because as always, we didn't really know the truth. You've seen the videos. You know exactly which ones. Two sea otters, holding hands so they don't drift apart while sleeping. A mother, balancing her pup on her chest like it's the most precious thing in the world. These videos have hundreds of millions of views. People even get tattoos of them. And all that time, we were looking at one of the most behaviorally disturbing, most repulsive, most physiologically extreme, and ruthlessly cold-blooded predators in the ocean. I am going to tell you every single fact, one by one. And believe me, most of them you didn't know either. Hello and welcome back to the Deep Science family. First, I want to share why I've been a bit quiet lately. I've spent the last week battling a severe case of the flu, and honestly, I could barely lift my head off the pillow. I usually take great pride in researching and producing regular content for you, but this illness kept me away from the channel for 10 days. I'm truly sorry for the wait, and I'll do my best to make sure we don't have another gap like that again. Thank you for your understanding and your support. Now, let's dive right into today's topic. Let's start with something that sounds simple, but becomes deeply unsettling once you understand the math. A sea otter eats approximately 25% of its body weight every single day. To put that in human terms, if you weigh 72 kilograms, that means you would have to consume 18 kilograms of food every day just to survive. But you aren't doing this to gain weight or to thrive. You're doing it just to keep from dying of hypothermia. Here's why. Sea otters are the only marine mammals without a layer of blubber. Every other creature in those freezing ocean waters has fat reserves that act like a wetsuit. Otters have none. Instead, they've evolved the densest fur of any animal on the planet, up to 1 million hairs per square inch. They compensate for that constant heat loss by running their metabolism at a near-violent speed. Their resting metabolic rate is roughly 3 times higher than what you'd expect for an animal of their size. Their bodies are essentially furnaces, and furnaces need fuel. This realization changes the way you look at everything they do. That famous hand-holding? It's called a raft. Groups of otters float together in kelp forests, anchoring themselves so the current doesn't pull them apart. But it's also a survival mechanism for animals that literally cannot afford to waste the extra energy swimming to find each other every morning. Floating on their backs? That's a mother who cannot put her pup in the water because the pup's fur isn't waterproof yet, and it would die of cold. She has to dive and find food constantly, all while carrying that weight. She is permanently exhausted. Permanently. A nursing sea otter mother exists in a state of near constant calorie deficit. And the tool use, that famous rock smashing. It isn't cute once you understand the teeth. Sea otters have some of the hardest tooth enamel of any mammal. Their molars are rounded and dense, specifically engineered to crush sea urchins, clams, and abalone. Research shows they can apply hundreds of pounds of force through those back teeth. This isn't a small ocean dog. This is a precision-killing machine with bone-crushing hardware built into its face. I keep coming back to this image. They're floating on their backs, cracking urchins against a stone balanced on their chests, looking perfectly peaceful. But inside, their bodies are burning through calories like a race engine burning fuel. There is nothing relaxed about a sea otter. Not ever. It is a non-stop biological emergency. And then, there are the parts where the story becomes morally unsettling. We've established that a female sea otter with a pup is chronically, desperately hungry. She has to dive, over and over again, leaving her pup floating on the surface, finding food in the depths, returning to nurse, and then diving again. It is a cruel, relentless cycle, and it only works if she can keep what she catches. But tragically, often she can't. Male sea otters have developed a behavior that researchers officially describe as pup hostage taking. A male will snatch the pup, grasping it, holding it, sometimes even pinning it underwater, and he will not release it until the mother surrenders her food. I want to be very clear about this, because I think the clinical language used in research papers often downplays just how disturbing this is. But this is not something to be taken lightly, everyone. This is truly repulsive. This isn't opportunistic theft. This is coercion. The male identifies the leverage, the one thing the mother cannot walk away from, and he uses it, deliberately and repeatedly. It is the exploitation of a mother's instinct. Documented cases show that males do this consistently, across multiple interactions, with multiple females. The mother is left with a choice: hand over the prey she spent hundreds of calories and precious time to catch, or watch her pup suffer. A mother will never choose the latter. And so, she always gives up the food. To me, this is where the, well, that's just nature excuse starts to wear thin. I'm not trying to project human morality onto animals, I really try not to. But there is something in the calculated, repeated nature of this behavior that I find much harder to rationalize than simple predation. It isn't hunger that drives the male. He isn't starving while she has food. He is exploiting a psychological vulnerability. He has found a mechanism of control, and he uses it. They force mothers into the most agonizing situation imaginable, as a regular tactical choice. These are not innocent creatures in the way we like to imagine, and their record doesn't end with kidnapping. I'll get to those other behaviors soon, because the pup doesn't always come out of these interactions in one piece. Injuries happen. Stress-induced complications occur. Sometimes, especially weak pups never fully recover after this kind of treatment. Females in high-density otter populations, Monterey Bay is a prime example, show measurably higher stress hormones than females in low-density areas. You can literally measure the biological cost of living near the males of their own species, right there in their blood. Sea otter mating is so violent that researchers actually use nose scars to identify and track females over time. The injuries are so consistent and so permanent that a female's shredded nose becomes her identity card. During mating, the male bites and holds the female's nose. This isn't a gentle nip. This is a prolonged, powerful bite that tears through living tissue. Mating itself can last up to 30 minutes, and throughout that entire time, the male bites and holds while the female struggles. A significant portion of this happens in the water, which means the restrained female's head is frequently pushed beneath the surface. Some females drown. I am not being sensationalist. Drowning during mating is a documented significant cause of female sea otter deaths. A living being losing its life in this way. It isn't just a casual part of nature, everyone. It is brutal. Those who survive carry open wounds on their faces, wounds that become gateways for serious infections in a bacteria-filled marine environment. Researchers have recorded cases of females dying weeks after mating from sepsis, caused entirely by these wounds. The violence of a single encounter follows them. It escalates. You can look at a female otter and read her history in the damage on her face, and at a population level, it gets even worse. In areas where female otters are outnumbered by males, it has been documented that males redirect their mating behaviors toward other species, specifically toward juvenile harbor seals. I want to handle this next part very carefully because the biology here is truly revolting. In 2010, biologist M. Tim Tinker and his colleagues published documentation of male sea otters in Monterey Bay, forcibly mounting juvenile harbor seals. Multiple cases, multiple males. These were not isolated incidents. The males targeted young seals, animals up to 5 times their own size, pinning them down using the same grip from their mating behavior, and assaulting them for periods ranging from minutes to over an hour. The seals were mutilated. Many of them died. And then, the males stayed with the carcasses. One documented case involved a male spending over 105 minutes with a seal he had just killed, returning to it repeatedly over the following days before finally abandoning it. Researchers concluded that this behavior stems from sexual frustration in environments where males are overcrowded or where competition is extreme. When normal reproductive opportunities are suppressed due to competition, low female density, or the brutal hierarchy of otter mating, some males shift this behavior entirely in another direction. Now, I've thought about this a lot, and I want to be clear with you about where I've landed. There is a version of this conversation where someone says, "This is just nature. It's pointless to assign human moral categories to animals." And there is a kernel of truth in that. Sea otters do not have a moral framework. They aren't making ethical choices. Their behavior is driven by neurochemistry, hormones, and evolutionary impulses. But at the same time, I think that framing can be a way of avoiding the dark reality. The harbor seal behavior isn't just unusual. By any measure of harm and suffering, it is horrific. And the fact that there is no conscious cruelty behind it doesn't make the pain those animals endured any less real. Let's reframe everything we've just discussed through a single lens. None of this is, in any meaningful way, psychopathic. Because psychopathy implies a deviation from a social norm that the individual is capable of recognizing and chooses to violate. But sea otters aren't violating anything. They are executing their programming flawlessly in an increasingly crowded, contentious, and resource-scarce environment. And I think this is the most important part. We have made sea otters the mascot of ocean conservation. And ironically, we were right to do so. They are a keystone species. Their predation on sea urchins prevents urchin populations from exploding and decimating kelp forests. Kelp forests sequester carbon. Healthy otter populations mean very directly and measurably healthier oceans. But we built this conservation narrative on a lie, or at least on a selective truth. They showed us the hand-holding and hid the harbor seals. They showed us the pup on the chest, but didn't mention the male waiting to take it hostage. I think we can do better. Because the actual true story is a savage, optimized, high-stress alpha predator that will do whatever it takes to stay alive. So, sea otters aren't cute. They are disguised as cute, which, when you think about it, might be the most sophisticated survival strategy of all, because it convinced an entire human civilization to fall in love with them, to fund their recovery, and to protect their ecosystem. Right now, somewhere in Monterey Bay, there is a male sea otter floating on his back, cracking an urchin with 350 pounds of bite force, and calculating his next move. I respect that, because that is their life cycle. They don't have the capacity to think or act like us. So, whether we accept it or not, this is their nature, if you ask my opinion. I respect them, but they don't seem cute anymore, especially after the kidnapping and the harm done to the pups. But I think there's something else that's frightening here, assuming something is innocent just by looking at the surface, without knowing the true face of the story. We tend to believe what we're told without researching, without investigating. And I'm not just talking about these creatures. Unfortunately, we do this in almost every area of our lives. If something looks sweet and charming on the outside, we assume it's the best. Don't be fooled by appearances, my friends. Be selective in life. Remember, in this world, anyone is capable of anything. Just be cautious. I love you all. I want to see you again in my next video. So please, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and let's meet again. Don't forget to like the video. Take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.